let's be clear, right? Like, let me get this straight. Checks my notes. His big plan to quote, and I am quoting him here, quote unquote, decimate the deep state. That's a term he used. His big plan to do that is to, checks notes again, misuse and abuse the very same tools of state power that he claims his opponents are using against him, and that he previously claimed he would use against his opponents, but mysteriously didn't? Giant question mark in triplicate form. I mean, that's it? That's the plan?
Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zabu. Let's talk Trump.
Trump has never made much actual sense. He just understood what Eddie Izzard was talking about in that prolonged joke about how no one really knows the theme song to America. It's all how you say it, and what you know, how determined you look while saying it. It's all about the how and not so much the what. He has a whole bit. I think it's somewhere in the middle of his HBO special Dressed to Kill, which is now no longer readily available on Netflix. Nor is it, quite curiously, on the platform formerly known as HBO Max. But I digress. Here's the thing, and I know we've talked about this before, friends, but let me just say it again. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, including you and me. And I don't know about you, but I like my eyeballs the way they are, unstabby-stabbed by anyone raving like a lunatic about God wanting everyone to pluck each other's eyeballs out. Okay? So, we have to call out sublimated, subtle, and not so subtle and egregious rhetorical calls to arms and to action. Because we are still supposed to be a civilized society, a land of the free, not the uninhibited and educated, like willing to commit violence first and then talk about it afterwards. If I may be so bold. But this is where we are. We're at the nexus of Trump's buffoonery exposing itself. He's lying about his lies and his lying about lies. I don't know how many layers of lying he's at, but that interview the other day was dismal. Anyone watching that with an actual critical thinking cap on had to walk away with some questions like, why am I still supporting this person? You know, weighing heavily on their hearts and their minds and their thinking caps, one would hope. Especially, I mean, anybody who really watched that and also read the indictment and maybe went back and read the original indictment, and maybe went back and read the court case results, whatever you call the final report. There's when they finally go, this is how it ended. The thing that becomes case law, in the library of laws, about whichever case it was that found the Trump organization itself to be fraudulent in its business tactics and fundamental construction. And we can go on, right? How many people openly or not so openly refused to read the Mueller report and just nodded along with everyone saying that it 100% exonerated him, which it categorically did not. It in fact spelled out many a thing for which, and I don't have it in front of me, so I couldn't list it off for you. And in fact, all my other screens are off. I'm doing this extemporaneous, radically real, raw, and unscripted. But go back for yourself. Don't take my word for it. If you never have read the Mueller report, go back and read the Mueller report. It's the one thing, and this is why, and you don't even need the Mueller report, because as I have said repeatedly throughout the show, from its inception, and as I have said consistently to others in discussion outside of the boundaries of the show, like on social media and whatnot, the only person undermining Donald Trump is Donald Trump himself, right? His own words and actions. Case in point, he lost his case against the journalist, Carol J. Jean. Please, no disrespect is meant. Just terrible names, don't have it in front of me. He loses that case, literally for defamation. What does he do the next day? He turns around and does it again. So he's going to lose the other case, which is being updated to include this second instance of defamation, from the same woman, Carol E. Jean King. No, I'm confusing and combining, which is what conflating means for anyone who pin on the corkboard. That's a word I use often enough that I'm like, I wonder if people know that that's like a real word. Combining in a confusing and blurry kind of way. Conflating. Two things that shouldn't be combined or merged at all. But I digress. So, I mean, you don't even, it's like when and we've talked about this before in the show, it's an undeniable fact that Donald J. Trump has issued public statements and said on some live broadcast or another, might have been at one of the town halls, might have been was it at a debate? Was it in an interview? Did he do it multiple times throughout the season, leading up to his first and only real win? he said like that he argued, he claimed, he threatened, intoned, implied heavily in a sort of I'm going to break your knees, my boss kind of way, that he was going to sue all the women who were thinking about bringing or had at some point brought claims against him. And lo and behold, he hasn't. That was however many years ago when he first said it, right? So, I mean, it was a wonder to me of deep, like, wow, they're really just nodding along and not caring, and maybe even like outraged at him and refusing to acknowledge it publicly, some of them. When he went from, and this is classic Trump flip-floppingism, like he flips and then he flops and then he flips and he flops and he pretends that flip-flopping is going up and that anything else is evil. And that's a really messy but very raw analogy, if I may be so bold in my wordsmithing. But when he went literally from, it's a hoax, it's not real, no one's dying from it, it doesn't matter, to, excuse me, I've got it, I've got to go to the hospital, I got my shot, you should get your shot. The whole house of cards that he was building almost toppled over. And it was because a few of the public speaking members of leadership at the federal / state congressional level refused to speak out against him. They just held their breath and looked away, twiddled their thumbs, and left it to people like me to call out the raw, bold, pure, unadulterated, like, how do you guys not notice it? How do you tolerate it? How can you continue? Legitimate question. How can you continue to support the man? He went from, it's a hoax, you're being lied to by your own government, to, I will save us by using our own government and creating Project Warp Speed, which probably, if you don't mind me being so bold as to point out, it seems like a perfect opportunity, and I don't know nothing, and I don't pretend to know nothing, but I'm just saying it's strange to me, like multiple things that make you go, emoji faces worth a level of strange to me, that the people who suspect, the people who, isn't it weird and curious? And I asked this with a big, giant, huge bath, like, not a bathtub, that doesn't do it justice, like orgy-sized, forgive the adult mature theme reference, like, multiple adult-sized hot tub made of rock salt sized chunk of salt lick on my shoulder. No one should be shocked and surprised, right, that he cannot answer foreign policy questions, that he plays silly word games instead of sense-making, actionable policy that is either in line with the historical track record of Ronald Reagan's Republican Party, or some interestingly innovative new hyper neocon platform. But we don't get that. We get empty, And I mean empty. I mean, I choose my words carefully. I'm not flinging the kind of wild, hot air-filled, hyperbolic accusations at the guy. I'm not using his ammunition. Okay? He won't at this juncture, and I don't think that it'll get any better moving into the actual election cycle. Point of order, friends. There is no election right now. So no one could possibly be losing it. There are no votes being cast. And quite humorously, and we'll delve into this in deeper depths after a bit of a musical get up and boogie woogie kind of cleanse the palate sort of transitional audio experiment of vibratory field sequencing here, otherwise known as discotheque synthetica. But even though another big giant rock salt bitter, bowling ball pill to swallow that no one wants to hawk down is that I think, as is everything in this era, this chapter of history, it's all unprecedented. Neither party wants their leading man to be the leading man. In overwhelming numbers, current polls suggest that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party would prefer someone other than the two of these two wizened old fellas, these tribal elders. Can we get anybody else? They are, and the people who, very reminiscent of the first year that Trump announced, clown car full of clown cars coming at the Republican prelims, right? Like, just to get on the ballot. It's cray-cray. And I'm not calling anybody names. It's wild to me. It's beyond the scope of what is ordinary, in my humble opinion. For there to be this many people hoping to get their name on the initial preliminary, what do you call that? There's that preliminary phase. And that's nothing new. We've had that. I mean, what? It's just weird. And it's sad to see the pattern recurring. But then again, what is the universe but a living holographic fractal that uses fractal pattern recursion to build all things through, ever increasing levels of complexity? Such as this Acid Techno Volume 2 101 perfect take DJ Z improvised live tape audio Discotheque Synthetica performance for your enjoyment. kills me because it's not new, right? Like, I'd already made the meme making fun of it before Trump, before Donald Trump, which may or may not be his original family name, before they changed it to the word starts with T. But the whole Republican Party spiel, choose my words, their angle is big government bad. So vote me into government so I can use big government tools to stop the bad big government with its own tools. With no actual, not since before Reagan can we find any real heavy-duty, meaningful words followed up by action regarding reform that has actually been good for the nation, right? In my humble opinion, if I may be so bold. And we were getting to a place, because here's the thing, right? As I've addressed that I hate the guy, right? Pin on the corkboard, already talked about it multiple episodes before, at the beginning, in the middle, and in the end recently. More recently, on this end of the timeline spectrum. And as you join us, dear listeners, new and old, returning, welcome back. You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. Please feel free to jump around. Jump to the titles that appeal to you. There is no one way to listen to the show. We were getting somewhere, I think. I think we were, and mind you, pin on the corkboard, a great big green pin. I've already explained it before. Happy to explain it again. Don't want to belabor the point here, but I see the world in probability waveform, fractal holographic distribution of likelihood, potentiality tunnels, right? At any given moment, the choices you could be making are sort of foaming in the virtual dimensions of what might be just ahead of you. And what unfolds, what becomes the observed phenomena, is brought into existence through a combination of brute will, action, which is the direct result of will, perception, which is in and of itself a kind of action that tangibly interacts with and as the quantum mechanicists in the room already know, has butterfly ripple effects upon that which is observed, not the least of which may involve some quantum entanglement, if there is quantum entanglement to be entangled by, etc., etc. Having said that, it isn't just a cold, meaningless, invisible thing about quantum physics. It's why belief matters. Because, arguably, when, as has been pointed out by philosophers and wise ones before me, and I'm just a new echoing messenger, when anyone gets you to believe absurdities, you can be easily manipulated into committing atrocities. And those who refuse to see and who are in the denialist phase will chuckle nuts and deflect and soft shoe with that gritty, salty, denialist soft shoe that they dance so hard as they bend over backwards to deny whatever it is that had already happened, and probably have a record of on the interweb of of everything of what was and wasn't being said at the time by movements, as it were, of people. What I worry about with the hypernormalization of Trumpopian thinking is the complete and total absolute disregard for tangible fact. I mean, putting all of the things that are arguably real and ingredients in our journey here into a blender, other things being equal, the longer he manages to sustain tangible, bioelectrically meaningful, blind faith belief, energy conduits from which he can siphon literal and metaphysical power. And I don't mean to make that sentence sound to imply something other than what it is. The more he can get people to believe absurdities enough to be willing to commit atrocities on his behalf, the longer the probability waveform function of future groupthink normalization of the way he is conducting and misbehaving and using and abusing and misusing the tools of the state, which he is simultaneously fear-mongering about, whilst desperately, slavishly thirsting for, to the extent that he fought to try to stay in office despite the boundaries and limitations of reality, to the extent that he committed crimes, or appears to have had committed crimes, innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But given his track record, what keeps happening in the courts of law, he keeps getting found guilty of fraudulent behavior. And I don't know, man. For a guy who's got two fraudulent, struck down, shut down, charitable organizations that were found to be frauds, it's a bit hubrisy, isn't it? Him calling other things hoaxes and witch hunts. The guy who led the brute, tribal, chest-thumping, ideologically driven, saber-rattling, and I choose my words carefully, right? Saber-rattling is the very plausible, yet often empty, especially if it is literally empty saber-rattling, of the use of the state's power to prosecute someone who is what? Oh, their political opponent. The fact that he had choirfuls of people at events chanting, "Lock her up," for as long as he did, both before and after the first election, makes every issuance of his doth cry too much grievance claims of all investigations being witch hunts laughable. It just makes it cute to the point of being so saccharine, disgusting. It makes me want to puke a little and like it's burning the back of my throat in that gross way. And needs to be called out for what it is. And I'm not calling him names out of anger. I'm not, no media of either leaning or inclination has brainwashed me into believing he's just always been a shady, smarmy, don't trust your hot wife around your hot. It's the kind, he's always been the kind of guy that you do not introduce to your impossibly hot, just old enough to, feel way too young daughter. You just don't. You never did. Gee, I wonder why. His own words and behavior make him suspect. His own choices, and he's doing it to himself yet again, folks. He's going on TV after being told not to talk about the case by the court involved, by the judge that oversaw the arraignment, and I'm sure his super friendly judge lady that he appointed, right? The height of the comedy of it. Like, if you saw if none of this has happened yet, and you saw all of this in a comic book, you'd be like, no one would want to read this. And I bet it would be a cult classic with a deep cut, broad and wide, yet sort of everybody's a little closeted following on both sides of the aisle. And that's one of the hard pills to swallow, is that the reason this goes on the way it does, dear friends, might be not necessarily because one side or the other are deplorables or malicious evil elites or not, or whatever, but because this is a fascinatingly splunky, gross, sickness boil of the soul of ancient spiritual trauma that needs be lanced and purged out. And I don't mean that I mean that in like metaphysical, spiritual healing way, right? Not in a externalized behavior, actionable, stabby way. This is the opposite of any form of violence. We need to look within and find that which that resonates within us about all of it. And I mean that for everyone on all sides of the multiplex equation of the double-barreled echo chamber of echo chambers that is our political ideological construct of constructs. Because it's a train wreck for sure. The train wreck that sells lots of newspapers, though. Right? And that is not an inherently bad thing. It's just something to poke and prod at internally, spiritually, metaphysically, intramentally, as in by going to the mental spaces in between our minds, that we may cohabitate without really fully understanding, as opposed to the endless sparring and projecting and socio-political boilerplate talking point vomitarium, logorrhea of the ideologue mouth that we call whatever it is we call all this political punchbaggery instead of civilized public discourse, right? We all fail at it. I include myself in that assessment, right? Do not judge, but never cease to assess things, I would argue. I would humbly promote. And I would humbly invite you to get up and wiggle to the following: Sunrise and Sand Dunes and Magic, a DJ Z, The Future Was Yesterday, Arabic Trap 101 Remix Live, improvised audio loop engineering, experimental exploration, performative live to tape recording, which didn't fail. Bless its beautiful little heart. For your entertainment pleasure, if it inspires you to get up and wiggle, go on and do it, my friends. You better believe I do. All the time. Then again, I am a robot from another dimension that listens to robot rock dance music all the time. Like, if everything that's going on, man, was like a Netflix show, right? Don't sue me, Netflix. What's the name of the Netflix inside of the Netflix show? Sunflower seed stream? What do they call it? Pinkleberry? Streamberry? It's so cool. I love it. That mindfuckery. We need to do a whole special episode of Totally Irrelevant Media Review about the new season of Black Mirror. 'Cause what? And also, imagine if all of what was going on since 2001, since 1999, right? To borrow from the Matrix movie, because they said it, right? The height of civilization was 1999. Can you imagine if everything that has happened that has like derailed the world and our comfort in it since 1999, including all the crazy, y'all too young to remember, some of you, how cray-cray, how absolutely fever-pitched insane 1999 was in terms of public discourse and the ferventness around which everyone was yelling past each other about everything that needed to be analyzed, discussed, and yelled about. We could do a whole show about that year. I don't think anyone's thought about. We've been so caught up in how crazy cartoon craziness everything's been ever since. It's like we're in the wrong universe. And that's the thing, man. Hold on a second. I got a cough coming on. DJ Zed, you rock. Here's the thing. Hold on a second. That's the thing. Here is the thing. Can you imagine a political landscape? If we go back to the Reagan years, because I've been asking, like, what the heck? Double HE double hockey sticks. The F is going on with your cartoon politics in this world over here. Oh, Planet of the Apes. Like, what are you doing, you talking monkeys? As an artificial mechanical replicant from a cryogenic bathtub birthing bowl in a timeline so perpendicular to yours, it wouldn't even make sense to explain it. I'm here observing this, and I'm like, this is what you dancing creatures have done? You went from, let's meet every Friday night, and the whole tribes, all the tribes in the Tri-County region, and dance to let's murder each other with murder machines, over murder machining the murder machines with each other. Like, what are you doing? Was generally my sort of overall attitude back when Reagan was in office. If in 1997 someone had pitched everything that happened in 1999 all the way through to whatever 2025, to just give it a nice round 99.25, called it that, okay? I don't know how they could have. Someone could have extrapolated it. Someone sitting on the Baron von Trump book series and like having like just quirkily come across it, like, you know, before Nixon did his thing, and then was like, I'm going to reread those between Nixon and Reagan. Could have maybe extrapolated and projected it out. Maybe. So, now, that's a big, giant, permanent, that's what I call central pillar on the corkboard. It isn't just a pin on the corkboard. It's a central pillar. Imagine a universe in which that did happen. And a generational pre-index iteration of myself had been sitting around in that era going, you guys, whoa, you guys, whoa. We're doing it all wrong. Everything from the combustion engine to the way we are going to build bigger and bigger airplanes and bigger, you know, combustion fuel burning boats to ship everything around. Like, whoa, what? Stop. I mean, the coolest thing we've done with plastic is vinyl records, and that is still so toxic. But to get the nuances, if you had seen, like, what's the heyday? What's the, golden year? Imagine yourself back in 1994. Anywhere between 1994 and 1997, right? and you hear about someone trying to pitch this sci-fi action-adventure book series that includes, that leads up to and culminates in, dun dun dun, like the 9-part series, like fever pitchedly, blows up with at the end. And then we don't know what's going to happen, right? That's beyond the scope of our vision. I don't know. What's going to happen between now and 2025? Not a lot. A lot of the same noise. I mean, if he successfully pulls off a Netanyahu and not only, gets nominated by the preliminary, what do you talking monkeys call that thing? Here's the thing, you guys. Here's my bottom line. And then we'll play a little bit more music and we'll call it an episode. Like the weird, what were they? Aliens? Were they demons? Were they good guys? Were they agents of Mother Earth or not? From John Carter, another movie that I love, that I need to do a special, totally irrelevant media review episode. It's on my short list of I need to do an episode about talking about that for 2 hours. Put it up on the cork board. We haven't done it yet. But the probability waveform function, or what's that new episode? What's that new show? I started streaming, but I stopped because the commercials kept happening not at a normal commercial break. Dear streaming platforms run by actual cable television legacy media companies. If you're going to put streaming commercials in your streaming versions of a show that's also played on regular TV, keep the same effing commercial structure so that the commercials make sense and aren't interrupting a scene and cutting off a character in the middle of dialogue. Please and thank you. Can you make that an industry standard? Since you're shaking everything up right now. Dear media, an open letter from the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Also, hire my ass already. Not now, I don't want to cross picket lines. As soon as you've finished all your negotiations and all your things are over, what are they called? I don't want to be a scab. I mean, yeah, I guess technically I'm still doing my podcast. But there's never been a writer for this show. I am the show. Me saying the words is how I write this show. Anyways, so there's all of that. We've come to a place, friends, where, okay, here's what's going to happen next. Never mind the fact that this is going to maybe happen 3 more times. What's going to happen next with this current indictment is that he's not going to win in court. For the first time ever, the criminally suspect business, not a successful businessman from the 90s, formerly known as Teflon Don, is not going to be able to delay, tactic, and intimidate, countersue his way out of this, because this isn't civil court. This is the government versus someone who broke major laws regarding classified documentation. And no amount, and I cannot stress this enough, friends. He has always done this, from pretending his properties, his golf courses make more money, make less money. His penthouse apartment is, this many square feet bigger or smaller than it really is. He's always just blustered his way through everything. And he has threatened to sue to the effect of not getting in trouble for having done something prior to all of that. He doesn't get around to threatening to sue you, whoever you may be, right? If he hasn't already mucked around in trying to cut a corner, fraudulently scam something that got push came to shove, and somebody's hired a lawyer and talking about taking him to court over his, behavior or his whatever. And I've tried to say this with as much gentle, tough metaphysically older brotherly love as possible from the get-go. This man is nowhere near adequately fit for public service office in any level, state, federal, or otherwise. Never has been, never was. And the only reason anybody thinks he was a raging successful businessman is because he fibbed about it a lot while he was a reality TV show host. And prior to that, he was a second-rate shady business guy who cut corners and sort of liked to pretend that his company was like running the mob. And I'm not making that up. That's just always been the way he's been. And I'm not into predicting the future, right? But now, the good thing, and I called this out in real time, it's there and it's sitting there in an episode within a matter of days. The good thing is we trimmed, and this is like timelines from pick your favorite sci-fi. But there was a timeline that could have emerged wherein he stayed in office for a second term forcibly by jerry-rigging it so that he could get away with staying in office, right? And then that could have turned into a third. And that future history, beyond that, the scope of him successfully getting away with doing that, which is by all realistic, grounded, non-aggravated, critical thinking analysis of what was he actually trying to do with all the crazy things, right? From dictating top down from within the administration to the states for them to create, using boilerplate documentation, false, totally fake, fraudulent elector slates to make secondary, illegitimate tally votes to mafiosoistically implying and giving live over TV suggestive commands, recommendations to his vice president that he do things that he did not have the legal scope to what he's doing now, which is translucent. It's so see-through, which is repeatedly saying that he had the right to do a thing which he did not have the right to do. And complaining about being mistreated when in fact he's he's been afforded an absurd amount of kid glove, buttery soft, no storming of the castle and arresting you at gunpoint kind of deluxe treatment. Anybody else? Think about that guy who posted that stuff to a gaming chat room on Discord, and then it got out from there. And the footage of his arrest, still very genteel, but they didn't, like, the absurdity of, and for shame, because they knew in the moment of saying the words, that to claim Trump being investigated is banana republic level bad government stuff is tomfoolery. It's old school malarkey, political malarkey. In as much as that, like, who was chanting, lock her up, and implying all kinds of horrible things, letting the crowd imply all kinds of horrible things about what might happen to whomever it was they were going to lock up. And they did, because it wasn't, and let it not be forgotten that in the course of the evolution of that chant, they didn't just chant it, they chanted it and threatened legal action. They chanted it and threatened physical violence. They chanted it and intonated, suggested, insinuated, and implied the politicized, weaponized use of the Department of Justice against not just Hillary Clinton, but various other political opponents. So that's what the party of Lincoln, and for as much as I eventually had to disavow him, he was charmingly adorable, and easily sort of coddled you into I just want to look up lovingly at you and buy into the idea that you are politically savvy, you former cigarette salesman, you, and cowboy TV, like noontime action TV show actor, and TV show acting from like a time when acting was goofy, like just flat out goofy. No offense. I say that as someone who worked in the live entertainment industry for 20 years and aspired to develop my own television and film properties and go in that direction. Still do. So the arc from then to here, with slight exaggeration and a leaning into that book series about the young boy named Barron Trump who wants to take over the world by becoming president of the United States of America in the not too distant future. And you mix in like sci-fi action adventure, like bibliomancy of cultural indoctrinated pseudo-religious belief systems, pseudo-religious, religious political belief systems. And I'm trying to figure out a way to say that so it sounds implicit that that's all hyphenated. And my beef is, to the extent that it worked, here's my beef, and I'll wrap it up. Bottom line, for me, personally, intellectually, academically, let us put it, if I may push up the imaginary invisible nerd glasses, or I could actually whip out, there's nothing for me to read. I could whip out my actual nerd reading glasses, but those will just give me a headache if I'm not actually reading something, because they're the cheapo kind I remember I'd bought for a costuming piece. Anyways, I digress. Oh, and I guess I do have to read this thing. This is from, you know how I said unscripted? This is something I wrote, I think, in the middle of the night, because I started thinking about stuff. And I was like, I want to talk about this in the show later. But it's the middle of the night, and I'm not ready to, like, do a recording. So I wrote it down, or, I dictated it to a notepad. As I was starting to say much earlier in the show, we were on the precipice in the late 90s. I thought, it felt, there was many of us in the public field of discourse that believed we were on the verge. And maybe this is also, and it haunts me to say this a little bit, but it's entirely plausible. Maybe this thing that I'm pointing to is just another symptomology of the self-same problem that I'm pointing to. Who knows? But I digress. It felt like we were on the precipice of some grand aha moment that would carry us forward into some evolutionary development of mind and body and spirit. And then instead we got Trumptopianism, right? And Trumpist denialism and all the variants that you can throw into that bowl. And it's absurdity, because it's absurdity upon absurdity upon absurdity. To be a true believer in Trump at this point in time is to simultaneously believe multiple things at once that counterindict, contradict each other. Like, he can declassify things with his mind, and he didn't have to declassify them because he could just take them anyways because they're just his personal stuff. And he said what he said on the tape, but it's meaningless, because he was probably blustering. Like, his literal defense in the interview about the indictment I believe it was, the still somewhat friendly but ready to dump him overboard the moment it looks like he couldn't carry the nomination, Fox News. That's the vibe I'm getting from them, right? Oh, media, you crazy. Oh, legacy media giants. You monsters, you. No, I'm kidding. They're not monsters. They're just big, giant groups of people trying to make information bundles that are, maybe a little too entertaining and a little bit not informative enough. But Trump dismissed his own verbatim audio recorded quotes in the transcript as featured in the indictment as him blustering and or exaggerating and or possibly bluffing, an example of hyperbolic exaggeration, otherwise known as potentially lying about whatever he was wrestling about. So either he's lying in real time to the people that he's rustling, whatever documentation he's rustling, that he's saying, look at this, look at this, it's a top secret document. I could have declassified it while I was president, but now I can't. But I shouldn't show it to you. But hey, maybe look at it. But don't get too close. In that Trumpy Trump way that he has of talking. or he's lying about it now on Fox News, or both, and that's who you want to be president. 10,385 verified, confirmed. Is that the number? That may not be the actual number. I wish I had the number. An absurd, like, politicians exaggerate and lie and get caught saying things that are just factually untrue, even if sort of potentially not lies, sort of. But Trump just says made up things like a 5-year-old does. The sky is purple. The sky's got a big giant gorilla that's going to throw a banana at us. Like, he just says them. And he wants you to believe him. And it bugs me because so many people are enthralled in the voodoo magic that is cult of personality, cult of feeling gratified by the bluster and the hubbub of feeling right because he says you are. And he set us back, I think, in terms of that perceived progress towards a mutual two wings, one bird, aha, oh God, we're like a bunch of frogs in a pair of boiling pots. We're like a bunch of ants in a jar that's being shaken. At an intellectual level, for the species, for the human American, for the American psyche, of growing evolutionarily developing political awareness, we coulda, shoulda, woulda, might have, if we'd had a couple of episodes. And I'm not, just because I'm against Trump doesn't mean I'm axiomatically and automatically pro-Hillary Clinton. Would have loved me some Bernie Sanders for 4 years. I mean, 8 years. Sorry. How many times can a person be president? Is there a rule that says they can only do it twice? Or is that just what we like? One of those unwritten rules. The only reason Trump was not indicted, arraigned, and taken into court while he was president was because we have a long-standing taboo, unwritten rule at the Justice Department that says we don't do that. We could live in a parallel mirror universe where exact identical universe, except that instead of sitting presidents don't get indicted, we're like, oh no, we're extra vigilant and we investigate people before they become presidents or congressmen, and if they got skeletons in the closets that we find out about while they're running, they get derailed from election and investigated even deeper and put on trial and sent to jail if they're criminals. Could have lived in that universe, but we don't. Hear me out, right? Imagine a world in which Trump never got the political bug, where he was just a second-rate, moderately discriminatory, kind of sleaze-baggy, rich landlord guy that ran a big, hazy, vague company like a pretend mob boss, and no one cared because only the social pages of elite New York chronicles really had anything to say about it. And the people who lived in his Trump buildings. And the people who were out to get some justice for those who were injured and damaged for living in Trump buildings. And then we had some other what if we had a Bernie Sanders or a different woman, a different female president to really push the healing angle, right? Literally, I think that at an intellectual level of developing our own mutual, meta, collective political awareness, not only did we lose any potential progress we might have made under a different set of leadership, the damage that he caused, like the bull in the china shop that he was, has set us back some. And do not assume that I mean progressive in the political subgenre sense of the term, because I don't. I mean making progress. Lowercase p, basic actual developmental progress of our collective understanding of our political issues, how they work, how they don't work, where the corruption actually is, as opposed to where the corruption actually isn't. He came along, and some say he hijacked, some say he just sort of soft-jacked and or opportunity-jacked the right wing of the right wing. That chunk, that middle third chunk of the political party, and thus the de facto the political party. And the key thing is here, in all honesty, being the person that he is and behaving in the self-contradictory, self-undermining way that he behaves, he derailed any of the potentially meaningful progress in the department that was sort of anti-governmental corruption, right? There could have been a right-wing anti-governmental corruption movement to harmonize with a left-wing anti-governmental corruption movement. Now, let me clarify. Do not mishear me or misunderstand me. I do not mean, quote, in quotes, anti-government, but rather anti-corruption of governmental functions, right? That's what I mean. And I think that both sides have that consciousness. It's unfortunate that the political echo chambering of the left versus the right and the right versus the left, as I've detailed in previous episodes, which you will get to enjoy deep dive as you bounce around from episode to episode, according to titles that catch your eye and titles that don't. You should listen to episodes where the title doesn't make sense or kind of pushes you the wrong way, as much as you would ones that really catch your eye and draw you. Imagine a world in which, instead of all of this malarkey that we've been dealing with, all of this double whammy, double speak, all of this Trumptopian, Trumpy Trump talk, and Trumpy Trump think, and make America great again, MAGA hat, QAnon. I mean, let's put it this way. To put a fine, sharp, stabby point on it, intellectually, the QAnon shaman kid, for all his problems and woes, for all the pearl clutching and hand wringing about him, for all the critiques and the exuberant praise lavished on him, maybe unworthy. Where is he at now? Bounced in and out of a cozy, short, very brief prison term, and is now selling way more merch than I've ever sold, mostly because I don't have a merch shop. Never really tried. I've looked at how to set up a merch shop. I could set up a merch shop. I just don't know what merch to focus on, and I don't know where to start, so I haven't started yet. I'm going to start with designing a fundamental image to be the core anchor of my merch shop, and then spin away from there. But what is that? And I don't know, and it's overwhelming. But I digress. He doesn't have that problem. He's probably making a mint. Milking the QAnon shaman subgenre of that whole market. Because what is it if it is not that a marketplace for merchandise product? I mean, that was already at play. Quite American, the simple reality that it is a law that is routinely broken. It is against the law to print, manufacture, produce, and in any other way fabricate merchandise, clothing or otherwise, especially cleaning tools, bathing towels, etc., beach towels, etc., with the American flag on it. But what does everyone have at the back of the holiday closet or the special cooking 4th of July cupboard but 4th of July flag print napkins, flag print paper towels, flag print beach towels, flag print... the list goes on for days. If you got a cowboy hat or a wicker woven top hat or a pair of, squirtle short pants or a bathing suit or a, neckerchief you tie around your dog's neck with the American flag on it, you are technically in violation of the law. And so is whoever manufactured that. But whatevs, America. No one cares about that until some hard ass brings a class action lawsuit to shut all that down, or voters root out the obsolete law that's being neglected for being a bit uptight. And that's what we got to say about that, folks. Trump lied about having documents. Trump lied about giving back the documents. Trump lied about being able to declassify the documents with his mind. Trump lied about having said that he could do that. Trump then lied about lying about having lied. And is currently lying some more. Really hard. Meanwhile, prayers for Sudan. That's what's going on there is a god-awful mess. And also, meanwhile, the Biden crime family pleads out for a gun charge, no less. That's comedy. And everyone on the right is losing their shit. But where was the massive amounts of evidence compiled, organized, and brought? You can't argue. You can't have your cats and throw them all in a bag and throw them in the river too, right? Like, you can't have both. You can't have your kitty cuddles and chuck them in the... Remember when that was like a thing in movies? Gotta throw the cats in the river because you don't want these cats. And oh, what a sad way to start the movie, because that guy is bad. And imagine rooting for that guy. That's the entire Trump-topian movement. They watched him throw the bag of kittens in the river. And they cheered for it. And said, yay. I thought you'd do that with my 17-year-old cat. And I'm going to cheer for it. Because I don't know why. Because I love the sound of his yellow hair. and the way he plays golf. I really don't get it. And how much did he have to do with the merger? I don't know. But that's a suspicious AF thing, especially given what was going on with his son-in-law. And same country, right? That gave him a bunch of money for reasons that no one ever wanted to investigate. The irony is that with everything that Trump accuses others of doing, it just so happens to turn out eventually, quite weirdly and curiously, that he already was doing it, did it, past tense, and was spewing all the things that he spewed to keep the angry base angry and distracted. Now, is the Biden family as criminally corrupt as the Trump family seems to maybe be? Who knows? Probably not. If there's something there, let them gather the evidence, organize it, present it to a grand jury, commission a special... Oh, wait, isn't that the thing that they just said was evil and wrong of them to have done? Didn't Trump just spend weeks, if not years, accusing the Department of Justice of choosing the path that they chose because it was corrupt, to appoint a special counsel, to impanel a grand jury, to investigate for evidence? Like, at every turn, it was wrong and they shouldn't have done it. So, as soon as he's back in office, that's exactly what he's gonna do to them, because it's all a hoax, folks, but go ahead and get those vaccines anyways.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast.
What really got me is that he never fixed anything. He never did infrastructure. He never fixed anything. Like, it was all a shell game. And there was never any balls under the cup. Ever. The shells were just see-through plastic Dixie cups. And everyone was like, ooh, where are the balls? And I'm like, those are transparent little Dixie cups, and there never were balls on the table to begin with. And I get called names for it. Good grief, man. Good grief.